Jerry Moore, ADOT.
Odin Tag,
Adam Ledford, PAC.
Melanie Lawson Tag,
RTA.
Lance Peterson, PAC. Jamie Brown, PAC.
Natalie Shep, Pima County Department of Environmental Quality.
Jason James, ADOT MPD.
David Zinda, PAG.
James Tao, PAG RTA.
Sonia Kelly with PEG. Janati Run with PEG.
Keith Rodriguez Tag.
San Diego, City of Tucson. All right, we'll go to item 2 in kind. Well, I'm sorry. Do you have folks online here? Let me take a look here. Let's start with Danny Grossman. There, Dan. Okay, maybe not. Dan Gabao.
Hi, everybody. Dan Gabbio, Federal Highways.
Andrea.
Good morning, everyone. Andrea De La Cruz, Town of Marana.
Well, Andrea. John Garcia.
John Garcia, Tana Saurita, morning.
Ben Elias.
Morning, Ben Elias, City of Tucson.
Thanks, Ben. Ansu.
No, PAC.
Molly.
Hi, I'm Molly. I'm with the City of South Tucson.
Thanks, Molly. And Sean.
Morning, this is Sean. I'm with Ecopia AI.
Thanks, Sean. Jason.
Jason Bai with Pasquiyaki Tribe.
Thanks, Jason and Paul. Oh, Paul's asking to unmute. You there, Paul?
Paul Burton, Town of Salvadita.
Thanks, Paul. Galavare.
Good morning. This is Nalo with the Town of Sarita.
Thank you. And then I think I saw Josue on there.
Sorry, I was on mute. Hey, good morning, everybody. Josue Lisa, City of South Tucson.
Josue. Anyone else that didn't introduce themselves online?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Was there anybody else online who hasn't introduced themselves? That's everyone. Now we'll go to item 2 in kind reporting. Jeanette.
All right, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the TPC. Regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by attendees, volunteers, and participants. PAG collects data on the time dedicated to meetings and activities to apply for use as matching funds for grants and federal dollars. If you're paid with federal dollars, please let us know now. Time spent in preparation for this meeting will be estimated by PAG staff who are knowledgeable of the agenda and meeting materials. At the conclusion of this meeting, the session report will automatically calculate your time spent in this meeting. Time spent working on PAG RTA initiatives, programs, and special projects may also be eligible for consideration for matching funds. I believe the sign-in sheet is out and circulating, so make sure you sign in today before you leave. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jeanette. Let's go to item 3, approval of the May 15, 2024 meeting summary. Did you all have a chance to review, and do you have any questions or comments? All right, hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Who's that?
Nalo.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving summary approved unanimously. Let's move on to item 4, transportation art by youth update. Lance Peterson. Go ahead, Lance.
Thanks. To provide a brief update on our academy program, as well as everyone's loud, makes sense. So, yeah, our academy program update, as well as we have updates from our local jurisdictions on ongoing TABI projects. So, first off, I'll just start with the program update. So as you know, PAG provides a new community transportation youth out program designed to incorporate new public art elements into transportation projects. PAG's youth art summer projects are awarded by faith-eligible jurisdictions in coordination with local art groups and artists. Project location should be adjacent to federal function classified roadways of minor arterial or above, and should have an aesthetic function and an impact on the traveling public. Projects are funded from set-aside portion of the PAG's Faith Plus 6 funds. The funding that can be given per project is $25,000 per year, with a maximum of $75,000 over 3 years. And our current memorandum of understanding with the jurisdictions in this program is expiring at the end of this calendar year. So we just wanted to bring it to your attention that PAG staff will be presenting an updated TAB MOU to the regional council at their December meeting. So with that, that's the update. I'm happy to answer questions before we go to our project updates.
Questions for Lance? Go ahead, Lance.
Great. We've got two project updates. Let's start with Benjamin from the city of Tucson. He's got a time commitment coming up, so we scheduled Ben first. When are you there?
Thanks, Lance. Appreciate that. Yeah, I'm just going to give you a brief update on the TABI project that's happening right now in the city of Tucson. This year, we're working with our Ward 4 Council office, and they were very excited to jump into this and see what we could do out on Escalante Road. Next slide, please. So this year, we're working with one teaching artist, a group of 8 youth artists, and 1 project coordinator that have been hired on to execute on this project. We are looking at an installation of a public art piece in the median of East Escalante Road near South Pantano. This is directly adjacent to Lower Lincoln Park and the brand new City of Tucson Parks Project Wagging Tails Dog Park. So it provides some integration and beautification adjacent to the dog park, but also has several safety benefits to provide a little visual friction for folks who are traveling along the roadway, and hopefully resulting in some safer speeds along that section of Escalante. The total project cost that we were looking at for this year was $75,000. And one of the pictures here on the left is one of the projects that was an example here locally of something that we wanted to put to the artist team, not to recreate, but to provide some guidance for what that project might look like going into the design process. Next slide, please. As I already touched on, a few of these benefits include youth employment. We're trying to target youth that might be coming from underserved or disadvantaged communities, and they're going to be working, they have been working under the guidance of a professional teaching artist. Our artist this year is Hirotsune Tashima, who's worked on a past TABI project before in other jurisdictions. All of our artists have been selected, both our teaching artist and our youth artists have been selected by a panel of community members and professional artists locally to help guide the process and really end up with a cohesive team going into this. It provides a sense of connection for the youth and for the artists, and kind of fosters greater collaboration. Our youth artists are ranging from 16 to 18. So they can certainly execute on a lot of really amazing work, but this gives us the opportunity to provide them a space to really hone their skills and move towards a professionalization of their craft. Like I already mentioned, this has the potential to really beautify the area and improve safety along the project corridor. Next slide. This was our project schedule going into this. Tabby's designed as a summer project. So we started the groundwork in March and April with our working with the Arts Foundation and developing our selection committee to select both the teaching and the youth artists. Into May and June, the team got working on their design. And they went back to that same committee that selected them to help refine the design and guide the process going forward. So they definitely had some touch points to guide their decision making. In June and July, they started with construction, fabrication, and now installation of the art piece. And we have a scheduled ribbon cutting event out at Wagging Tails Dog Park on Saturday, July 27th. That'll be in the morning. There's going to be a lot that goes into that. I think we're really excited about what that'll look like. But the closeout of this project is really, we're shooting for the end of July and then just wrapping up loose ends. Next slide. The guidance was put to the artist team where they had a kind of selection of materials and some project examples, some artistic examples to work off of, but a lot of the design was refined by the artists themselves, toying with some materiality and working with the concept of an interactive puzzle mural. There's nothing out there to paint on in the median of Escalante, but there's a lot of space to work with. The decision going forward was to create a piece of recycled metal street signage that we were able to secure from the City of Tucson Sign Shop and repurpose to fabricate a new design that could be painted on and shaped to tie in these themes of the nearby dog park and a lot of the stories and connections that we heard from the adjacent neighborhood associations, users of the dog park. And that was very much led by the Ward 4 office and their willingness to work with us to create a really holistic project. This example shown on the screen is a kind of variation off the original puzzle mural concept where the artist team had been cutting up and creating panels of recycled street signage in an accordion wall. So it's not going to be a single panel that just runs along the roadside, but it creates multiple images depending on where you're viewing it from the roadway. So for drivers that might be traveling eastbound on Escalante, they will see a more colorful outline of a dog running. And from another point of view, maybe someone who's walking along Atterbury Wash Greenway and adjacent to the park on foot, they'll see some of the original recycled material of the street signage with that still same cutout of a dog shape. So it's very much staying on theme, but playing with some different visual techniques to add interest and make it a little bit more experiential for all road users. Next slide, please. Like I mentioned, we have a couple integrated elements into this artwork, very much focusing around the dog theme. being adjacent to the dog park, but we also asked, in collaboration with the Arts Foundation on this project, asked for folks that might want to submit a dog name of a beloved pet as a sort of memorial for folks that might want to have a connection to this project and bring the community into its development a little bit more. We also spoke with and interviewed with the project team, the users of the nearby park, not just Wagging Tails Dog Park, but also Lower Lincoln Park and the nearby Atterbury Wash. There are a fair amount of birders who have a long history enjoying that wash and natural riparian area. So the team decided to weave in some aspects of the native birds that are there on site. Next slide, please. These are some process photos of when the teaching and youth artists actually got to work on the design and fabrication. You can see we're working with a real mix of recycled sign material, but I think the students had a lot of fun with it in particular, and they were really chasing down some really creative and unique approaches to the design and fabrication. Next slide, please. In addition to the accordion wall mural, which you can see laid flat currently on the left side, we were also able to provide some low-cost additions to the project theme, where we would have the project team develop a series of accordion wall murals with dogs running along the length of the median. That's our project area. And then at the very end, where the last accordion wall mural is set, directly adjacent, there's a sculpture that is looking like it's jumping out of the mural wall. So there's a Saint Bernard there that will be adjacent to the last accordion wall mural, and it's lightweight, still factoring in to account any safety concerns with breakaway materials. It's made with foam core with a light coat of concrete over on top of it, so it can still be painted and sculpted, but will conform to any safety concern or safety standards that we have in the right-of-way. Next slide, please. Sorry. Just for reference, this is the general location of the project. Like I said, it's along East Escalante Road, which we had just fog sealed. This is a section of road that's a little east of Pantano. On the bottom right of that aerial, we have the entrance to the Wagging Tails Dog Park, and a little bit further east is the actual Atterbury Wash, but we wanted to stay out of any flooding concerns, so it's a little bit higher up on the hill. It's a lot of room to work with, but we still had taken into account any safety concerns, allowing for a 16-foot clear zone on all sides, and making sure that we take into account site visibility triangles. Next slide, please. So as we're nearing the end of this project, it's wrapping up pretty quick. We're working with the Arts Foundation, the Ward 4 office, Ward 4 Council office, and the Department of Transportation and Mobility's Strategic Communication Division to kick off a ribbon cutting event for the completion of this project. It's scheduled for Saturday, July 27th from 8 to 10:30 out in the dog park itself. So we'll have several community stakeholders out there, and we're trying to have a really good time. There's going to be dogs for adoption at the park from a local adoption agency, and there's we're going to have the Arts Foundation, City of Tucson, some integration with the dog park and the green stormwater infrastructure that was recently installed there by our Tucson Water Storm to Shade team, as well as food and drinks and treats for everybody that wants to come out. They'll have the opportunity to meet the artists. We'll say a few words and commend them on their valiant work. So that'll be coming up really quick, but I just wanted to let everybody know here at the TPC, feel free to come out. We'd love to have you. Yeah, I think that's all I had. Next slide. That's it. So let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ben. Appreciate your work on this, and a pretty exciting project for the east side there and complementing that dog park. Any questions for Ben on this project?
Do you know how many students are involved in this project?
We had 8 students.
8 students. And how were they selected? I mean, are they from different schools or just one school?
No, they're from different schools. We worked with the Arts Foundation to have a open call to artists. So we had both a call to artists for the teaching artist and for the youth artists. They represent students from all over town and also from public and charter schools. So we got a pretty good mix of folks also coming from kind of different backgrounds and different areas of expertise. So we did have a few artists that we needed to deny their applications due to some restrictions given the MOU that we have with PAG for this program. The major issue that came up was that the youth artists needed to be 16 to 18 at the time of the project, but they also needed to be an incoming student for the fall. So there were some seniors who applied and they would no longer be attending high school in the fall, so their applications were denied.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thanks so much, Ben. I hope that you all can join us for the ribbon cutting for that event. Appreciate your work, man.
Great. Thanks, Benjamin. Up next, we have Andrea Dela Cruz from the town of Marana.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, good morning, and thank you again for the opportunity to participate in the TABI program. My name is Andrea Dela Cruz. I'm the assistant to the town manager for the town of Marana. So the town, in partnership with the Marana Unified School District's welding program and local artist Trevor O'Toole, they've been working on an aviation-themed sculpture that will be located at the Marana Regional Airport along Abra Valley Road. So the art sculpture commemorates the role that the North American AT-6 Texan plane in Marana's history. So early on, for project inspiration, we did give the TABI project team, so the students, the instructor, and the artist, a tour of the airport to not only learn about the airport, but also to see an AT-6 in person and to just inspire them as they begin the project. So this slide does show some of the photos of the tour and the AT-6 plane that they got to see and learn about. So the students overall really enjoyed this tour and were very fascinated with the plane. Next slide, please. So this picture here shows one of the students working on the art. So the students began the construction phase on May 29th and have been working hard since then just to make sure that they stay on schedule. So here again is a photo of the art sculpture. It is approximately 11.5 feet tall, and it does feature 2 AT-6 planes that are flying. Next slide, please. So this next photo is of the 3 welding students that are participating on the project, and this was taken a couple weeks ago. Next slide, please. So we are currently on track for an August installation of the art. Students completed the construction phase of the project. So next steps do include painting the airplanes and the streams, and then installing the art at the airport. This does conclude my very brief presentation, but happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you so much, Andrea. Any questions for her on this project?
No question.
Go ahead.
How many students were involved in this project besides the 3 welders?
So it's 3 students that were part of the project.
Welders.
Yes, from the welding program.
Any other questions? Thank you so much for your presentation, Andrea. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, Lance, next up.
Great, thanks, Andrea. Next up is John Garcia from the town of Sahuarita.
Hi, welcome. We completed our project in June. Since 2006, we've via an IGA have partnered with the Sahuarita Unified School District and our teachers there to sorry, someone's trying to get in the gate. To do our projects. The concepts usually come from them. The ideas usually come from them, and the art that comes from them. Next slide, please. So for this year, it was a 3-week timeline. We spent about $19,000, a little over $19,000, to decorate another bench and can, and to decorate 2 more traffic signal cabinets. We had 6 students and 2 Unified School District art teachers. So they're teaching art. They're art teachers. One of them is DePore. This is his last year. He's moving to Flowing Wells due to having young kids. So the person, our teacher in 2022 that helped with the initial traffic signal cabinets, Danielle, was also here to do the handoff and potentially be the one for our project next year if we have one. Next slide. In general, here are the processes that it takes to decorate benches and traffic signal cabinets. Next slide. The locations of the traffic signal cabinets were Sahuarita Road and La Cañada and Sahuarita Road and Nogales Highway. And there was a new multi-purpose path that was built on Pima Mine Road between Rancho Sahuarita to the casino, approximately 1 mile, and approximately halfway along the way, it was a perfect spot to add a concrete pad and put the bench and waste can as a potential resting place. And I have seen people use it. Next slide. Just some pictures for your information about how the process works and the students doing their artwork. And you can see that they have on the top left picture that they do have a process of how to try to do things. Again, we don't limit the students to depending on what's going on, we don't limit the students for this year. We didn't limit the students on what concepts, what artwork they wanted. So they brainstormed, did their arts. They gave it to us. They gave it to town management. We got refined. We did that back and forth a little while, which is what we usually do to say what's going to become the art on the pictures. Next slide. These are the final products for the traffic signal cabinets and the art and waste and the bench and the waste can. Next slide. So just some in-process work for the cabinets. Just some more in-process work for the tile. Next slide. So there's the end product for Nogales Highway, Sahuarita Road. Next slide. End product for Sahuarita Road and La Cañada. The B Sahuarita, initially, if you see on the initial artwork, the Sahuarita was just going to have that the wording of B Sahuarita wasn't going to be there. It was just going to be the B. And then Beth came to say that we're using the words Be Sarita on our webpage. If you go to our community webpage part, there's a part of come and enjoy Sarita, Be Sarita. So we, use that and put Be Sarita on the another additional thing for the colors those are town color scheme that are on this cabinet. Next slide. Next slide. So as you saw, there's 6 students and 2 art teachers that help with this project. Next slide. Those are the names of the students. Any questions? Thank you, Transportation Planning Committee.
Great, thanks so much, John. Beautiful work by the students. In fact, I saw one of the signals not too long ago for the signal cabinets. They look fantastic. Any questions? Zach?
Signal cabinets are painted with artwork. That's
Yeah.
a good idea.
Send them up to Tucson. We have some they can paint as well. Any other questions for John? All right, thank you so much, John. Anything else, Lance?
Well, that was it. Thanks, John. That's our update.
Great, thank you so much, and to everybody who's put work into this. Really a great program. Let's move on to item 5, regional transportation revenues update. James Tao.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, TPC members. You'll turn to table 3 and figure 1 in your regional transportation revenue report. Through May, there was about $169 million in HERF and PLT collected across the region. Of that $169 million, PAC collected about $28.5 million, or about 17% of that regional funding. The remainder was distributed directly to our jurisdictional partners. Regional HERF revenues were a 4% increase year over year. Over the 5-year average, we stood at almost 12%. Table 4 shows HERF 12.6 in detail. Through May, we have collected $28.5 million, which is 13.6% more than the ADOT official forecast and nearly 8% stronger. Table 5 shows HERF 2.6 was stronger than expected collections, totaling $6.4 million through May, which is 9.4% stronger than last year. So table 6 through May had just over $95.5 million in an interest-bearing account. Most of these dollars are spoken for. In table 7, we look at the city and town HERF distribution to your state. Table 8 shows the HERF 12.6 and 2.6 we've already seen. Additionally, we have Pima County HERF and Pima County vehicle license tax portion set aside for transportation use only. And table 9 has the previous 5 years and lets you see how much HERF your city or town received. Table 10 shows us gasoline, gallons of gas sold in Pima County through various fiscal years. We normally like to see about 13%, and through May, we were just under 13% for the fiscal year. And in table 11, about $112.6 million has been collected in TPT through May, trending for more than 3.5% gain over the adopted budget. That is similar to the percent rise over last year's actuals, just under 4%. Mr. Chair, that concludes my update. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, James. Any questions for James on this? Wait, Catherine.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. 2 quick questions. One, you mentioned the funds in an interest-bearing account. So where is that interest just reinvested into that fund type and considered that fund type? And then my other question is, looks like 12.6 and RTA both performed better than we had programmed. So what's going to be the process for programming that fund as well as the interest?
Well, preliminarily, I would say that would have to wait until the next tip cycle. Looking at the projects as they stand, there are immediate needs, but not immediate needs in the sense that those dollars need to be made available immediately. So there's programming already in existence for these projects, but my sense is, we can take action earlier if necessary, but I think ideally it would wait until the next tip cycle.
What do we anticipate the next tip cycle will be? 2, 3, or 4 years?
Basically, right. We began the process. So that's my initial thought.
Even for the RTA funds?
Are we referring to the contingency dollars, the 20.5 million?
I'm referring to the excess collections from what we had budgeted.
Well, that would be taken into account in the next budget cycle.
Okay. So not part of the rollover that is yet to happen?
Well, with the rollover, we just focus on the program dollars from the previous budget. We don't get into the revenues at that point. Again, under certain circumstances, I assume we could address things if necessary, but there is no immediate need that I can see as it relates to projects not having dollars programmed in the current budget year. So we're looking at an overall picture of a project that may indeed need augmentation or supplementation. And I think that there's time to address that in the normal process.
So about how much is being earned in interest?
That, I can't give you a number on that. I believe it's probably a year.
Yeah, so I think the interest on that account is roughly 3 to 4%. And given that we have almost 100 million of HERF in that account, that would be about $3 million, which seems to track if you look at that kind of breakdown in table 4, was it, or something like that?
And then is the RTA in a similar interest bearing account?
RTA, I'm not as familiar with, so I can't answer that question.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
This is push. You just mentioned the fund balance on the top one. We're getting close to that 100 million. What's holding projects are out there that's going to draw down the fund balance?
It
seems like every year it keeps going up and nothing's something's not happening.
Well, with every year, typically we have additional programming and then we're not getting drawdowns. So that's why.
Are there any big projects in the horizon that's going to bring down the fund balance? Yeah, that's a lot of money to have out there.
And when we do have projects on the horizon, certainly, but I would probably defer to Rick Ellis.
I was just concerned because that's a lot of money sitting out there.
It is.
Can I tag on to your question? Were any reimbursements of 12.6 made this year? And also, were there any reimbursement requests submitted that were not completed?
So we do have a backlog of HERF requests that we're working on just based on documentation and some issues with the packets. But and that wouldn't really affect the larger picture. I mean, they're talking about $95 million. So it's not significant when you look at that amount.
Jamie's at the podium. Did you want to add anything, Jamie?
Thank you. I just here in case James wanted to ask for any additional information on that.
Okay.
Happy to provide additional. Lance is also the new lead on the HERF reimbursement process, so we can provide more details as necessary. It's probably helpful to keep in mind that of the 95 million, not all of that is programmed. It's about 85 million that's programmed. And as you recall back in December with that worksheet, we've held back the required 10% contingency for HERF 12.6. But
10% contingency, an annual amount of HERF 12.6, that'd only be 2.8 million.
10% for the first year in the program, followed by 5% thereafter.
So at the end of fiscal 29, based on that TPC worksheet we all put together, there's about $5.9 million remaining that's unprogrammed. But that's consistent with what we put together with with the worksheet last year.
You know, this is a significant amount of money that we're sitting on, and essentially based on where we were last May versus this May, no money was spent. Virtually no money. It's $28.5 million more. That's about what we took in.
But these
So-
dollars are spoken for and they're programmed for the most part on projects. So they're not, it's not excess or surplus. You look at the large picture. Every year it's going to increase until there's drawdown.
So can I suggest on a future meeting, can we have a conversation about which projects those funds are sitting on? And then, you know, as a collective group, have a conversation on what basically is stuck and what can we do as a region to get these projects moving forward? If there's, you know, something with the collective knowledge of how to get projects moving forward. This is more than 3 years of funds just sitting there.
And if you still have a copy of that worksheet, you can get a general sense of it just from that.
Sure. I think it'd be a good discussion topic for a future meeting.
All right, thank you, Catherine. We will add that to the ever-growing list of future agenda items for TPC. Future discussion on the use of 12.6, right? Thank you. Other questions for James or the staff?
How are we doing on 2.6?
I'm sorry?
How are we doing on the 2.6? The balance, I know that's being used.
I don't think about something that needs to find is off. It was my. So our collections were 6.4 million through May, and that's 9.4% stronger than last year.
Thanks.
Us? Anyone online? Thank you, James. We'll move on to item 6, update on the regional active transportation plan. Bowden, Hannah?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Hannah Oden. I'm a planning coordinator of PAG, and I'm just going to provide a brief update on the PAG Regional Active Transportation Plan. I'll also refer to it as the RATP. We do have our acronyms. So we have been working closely with the consultant, which is Kinley Horn, on the RATP development. There's an RATP working group that met at the end of April, and that's comprised of jurisdictional representatives to discuss the plan. And the draft vision, goals, objectives, and performance metrics. The next working group meeting is anticipated for September. We're also working closely with the Copia AI to obtain and use the orthophoto feature extraction data for use in the plan. And more information will be provided about that effort during the next agenda item. The consultant has completed most of the data collection and is currently beginning the analysis phase, which will run through the summer. So this includes the level of traffic stress analysis, equity and public health analysis, connectivity analysis, as well as a safety analysis, and that will all feed into the regional corridor identification and evaluation. The public outreach for the plan was adjusted to accommodate the RMAP survey. So outreach for the RATP will begin towards the end of this month and will include outreach at 4 community events, a survey, an online interactive map, and illustrative renderings demonstrating different active transportation treatments that we can get feedback on. Again, the plan is anticipated for completion at the end of the fiscal year. And this concludes my update. Very brief update, but happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Hannah. Any questions for Hannah on this topic? All right. Thank you very much, Hannah. Hearing none, we'll move on to item 7, orthophoto future extraction update. Let's see me on.
Mr. Chair, Mead's out this week, but Sean is here from Acopia AI and he'll be presenting the update.
All right, take it away, Sean.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name's Sean. I'm with Acopia, which is a young tech company from Toronto. We've created an AI-based mapping engine, and it takes imagery from, or takes imagery or orthophotos and creates usable map data from it. I'm grateful that Mead invited me to talk with you guys, and grateful to to become friends with a lot of people in PAG. I live in Denver, but my dad grew up in Tucson, so I remember coming there a lot as a kid. I found out my grandmother bought a house in 1960 for $15,500 on East Exeter, which is, I think, next to Tucson and Broadway. So hopefully you don't judge me as a pure outsider. So we agreed to take the new ortho photos that PAG acquired and do in-depth and accurate feature mapping as quickly as possible to establish baseline data for carbon reduction, but also to kind of weave in with the RATP and provide geospatial data for as many uses as possible. Next slide. So I believe the plan is to achieve carbon reduction. I'm not a carbon reduction expert, but to get more drivers off the road and more people biking and walking. So we are leaning in pretty heavily with the team at PAG and the consultants who are doing the regional active transportation plan, and seeing if we could do anything like what things could we map right away that could help make their lives easier and their analysis stronger, as well as going along with our initial planned project, which I'll dive into a little bit. Next slide. So when we talk about feature extraction, it's finding all these things in the imagery. Here's a couple of them highlighted, and putting them in, creating actual individual layers that GIS and planning professionals can use in order to do their own analytics. So some of these are really easy. Some of them are really hard. And so it's a little bit of do our best to map as much as we can over like a really big area. So this tends to be data that a lot of agencies wish they had. And now with the kind of how good AI has gotten and being able to like turn pictures into information, we've gotten to a point where we think we can create this useful data pretty quick and pretty cheap. Next slide. So we made this sample data. I wanted to give you a little background of what we're doing. So this is this is one of your aerial images, not from this most recent one, but from the one before, so we could build sample data. Next slide. We turn it into all these features. It's not as good as the art as was previously presented at this meeting, but we're trying our best to do like some kind of paint by number rendition of it. But in all seriousness, it's just a bunch of as many different features as we can to separate them into individual layers. Next slide. This also includes tree canopy, like overhead tree canopy. And if you wouldn't mind toggling a couple times with the last slide and this slide, just so you can kind of see, if you or I were to map this, we could kind of interpret that some of these sidewalks or infrastructure features that make sense to map out under a tree, even though we can't necessarily see it. A lot of times when you try to do these classifications and you just use automation or just use machines to do it, it's kind of a mess. And humans are smarter than machines at the end of the day. So that's kind of our special sauce, is we've created this workflow and engine to look for these things, even though they're under tree canopy. But it also ended up really helping in this project because as I can attest to it, when I visited a couple months ago or a couple weeks ago, it is extremely hot, and it's nice to have the overhead tree canopy modeled against the infrastructure. Next slide. And these are the features that we kind of started with as far as talking with you guys and building a proposal around. But we didn't want to just lock ourselves into that. We wanted to talk to the community and the stakeholders first. And so if you go to the next slide, we had I forgot. I always forget this slide. I'd be remiss to not also say there's a little bit of a 3D component. So we're doing 3D buildings. So high attribution on buildings, groups of tree canopy and bridges as well. And so we'll be looking to roll those into specific use cases that can help as well. Next slide. So I visited on June 25th, and Mead and Hannah helped a lot, inviting as many community members as possible. You guys probably got a bunch of annoying emails from me. I'm sorry about that. But I wanted to invite as many people in to talk about it. And, like, what are we mapping? Are there things we're missing that maybe we can add to this list? Are there use cases we're not thinking about? Are there things that are unique about Tucson that are different from maybe like what we're used to mapping in the rest of the country? And we had some good quick wins, like, hey, let's make bike lane buffers and individual center line in addition to the bike, or in addition to the bike lane, or hey, let's try and map the both paved and unpaved paths as well, so we can model better where everybody's walking. And you can see a few other things like that. The solar panels is really cool. We are not as progressive. I live in Denver. I think I mentioned that. We're not as progressive here, where we don't have like a whole bunch over parking lots. And I even found one over a school playground, which I thought was awesome. But adding those into the layers as well. We also talked about if the community wants to engage in quality control, play with the data, play with the stuff we mapped, and you know, hey, maybe you're really an expert around your house and you notice we labeled something wrong. What's an easy way for anybody who wants to get on there and fix it? Use discussions. We had a great range of, you know, water, flood, you know, smart cities, transportation, planning. It was awesome. And, you know, what are some other things that might want to be mapped in the future, or that's really hard to map that we can't necessarily do on this one? Next slide. Just want to show you the QC platform really quick. So this is a platform we created where after we're done mapping everything, we tile them out. And if there's members from any of the towns or anybody wants to kind of sign up, you can check out a tile, you can dive into that tile, you can investigate all the data, turn things on and off, make sure that we did it right, or hey, maybe we missed a sidewalk or whatever. And it's just a cool way for everybody to kind of chip in a little bit and make sure the data is as awesome as it possibly can be. Next slide. Last, I wanted to just kind of show the schedule that we made with a big asterisk that says subject to change, but everything's going pretty smooth so far. We did a lot of the workshop. I'm working on a feedback meeting report that kind of summarizes what we talked about at the workshop and some moving forward from that. And right now we're just we spent a lot of time just kind of getting the imagery teed up and ready for the big project run. It is 1,408 square miles over Eastern Pima. So it's a lot of data and it's a lot of things to map. But that's where we shine. And so we're going to try and get that done in the next couple months. And then I noticed a little gap here. I don't love that. So maybe that's a lot more QC engaging with the community to try to QC the data as much as possible, or moving some of this stuff up. And yeah, that's about it for me. If you have any questions, let me know. And then I think there's a few other slides that Hannah or Jeanette might want to finish up.
All right, thank you, Sean. I'm just going to just go into a little more detail briefly about how the orthophoto feature extraction data will support the RATP. So the Ecopia AI data will assist with one is the level of traffic stress analysis. So this basically shows what streets are the most and least stressful for active modes users. So we'll identify streets that are suitable for kids. So these are lower traffic speeds, lower traffic volume, lower stress streets versus streets that are more appropriate for what we see with the strong and fearless users. So these are streets with higher traffic volumes and higher traffic speeds and are essentially just higher stress streets for active modes users. So this effort requires extensive data such as sidewalk inventories, on-street locations, shade cover, et cetera, that Ecopia will provide.
And also includes an equity and public health analysis.
So the Ecopia data will provide information on the built environment, active modes facilities and areas with disadvantaged or vulnerable populations to better understand transportation restrictions and challenges in those areas. The regional travel pattern analysis analyzes scenario planning and using active trip potential, equity area travel, and traveler alignment, and we include an interactive dashboard and a mapping tool to assist with project prioritization. The Ecopia data provided will feed into this as part of the region-wide based data. And lastly, the Ecopia data will support a connectivity analysis for the region and ultimately priority corridor selection and identification. Next slide, please. There we go. Thank you. And then next, I also want to touch on the carbon reduction benefits that are going to be analyzed as part of the RATP. So Ecopia data will support the carbon reduction benefits by identifying opportunities to connect and improve the active transportation network, and essentially encourage and make it possible for more people to use active modes of transportation and reduce the amount of vehicle miles traveled in a region. This analysis will focus on vehicle trips, shorter vehicle trips replaced by active modes. The data provided by Ecopia will feed into the carbon reduction analysis. All right, and just wrapping it up, kind of big picture, where we're at. So the RATP has 7 main tasks. So we are just getting, finishing up task 3, getting into task 4. So again, moving into that data analysis, the regional corridor identification and evaluation. For that, wraps up my part of the presentation. Sean and I are available to answer questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Sean. Hannah, can you go back 1 or 2 slides? Give us 2 slides. Yeah, 1 more. So I'm curious to just know more about, it says that the data is going to help prioritize methods and strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by identifying gaps in the active transportation network. So once those gaps are identified, what does PAG see as being the next steps to address the carbon reduction benefits of this?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So once those gaps are identified, so we'll lead into that prioritization. It's basically seeing where there's opportunities to fill those gaps with the most benefits to increase active modes and thus reduce carbon emissions.
Okay, thank you.
If that helps, yeah.
Other questions? All right, hearing none, thank you so much, Sean and Hannah. We'll move on to item 8, the 2055 Regional Mobility and Accessibility Plan on that update. Jeanette and Hannah.
Yes, Mr. Chair, there's several components to this presentation, so there's a few of us that are gonna provide updates on different pieces. So we can go ahead and get started. Hannah, did you want to go first or? Sure. Let's make sure I have the right.
All right, thank you. Hello again, members of the committee. So I'm just going to provide a brief update on the 2055 RMAP that's currently under development, specifically the RMAP working group updates and project list updates. So 6 RMAP working group meetings have been held so far, and the most recent one was in May. We do have one scheduled for next week on Monday, which is the 22nd at 1 p.m. in a virtual format. So discussion so far has focused on evaluating performance measures and providing guidance on the 2055 targets, particularly those related to safety. We've had some good conversations about those targets, as well as, of course, discussing the in-plan project list. So since the last meeting, PAG staff have met individually with jurisdictional representatives to confirm project cost estimates, projects to be included in the in-plan list, and any updates to local funding contributions that impact the financial plan. So we continue to work with and receive feedback from jurisdictional members to refine the project list through these discussions, as well as feedback received at these meetings. Again, once the RTA Next project list is adopted by the RTA board, and that information will be incorporated into the 2055 on that project list. Currently, we're using the most current RTA Next project list for all new project list discussions. So the next step is to have the working group recommend approval of the performance measures and associated targets, as well as the draft project list within the parameters of the fiscal constraint. The RMAP working group has also been briefed on the modeling work that the PAG data science team has been working on, and will receive an additional update at next week's working group meeting. So as a reminder, all projects are in the RMAP Project Explorer, where jurisdictional partners can explore project lists and view project details, including performance reports, and additional layers such as disadvantaged user information, and details such as cost or disadvantaged facility user information. Details such as cost estimates, of course, may be updated as needed as we work to finalize that draft project list. So that concludes my brief update. Happy to answer any questions. And we also have an update on the financial plan, the RMAP survey, and the modeling work from the data science team. Thank you.
Get that update today.
Yeah.
Does anybody have questions for him, or do you want to see the rest of those updates before we go into Q&A? All right, keep it rolling. Next.
Melanie Lawson's going to give an update on the public outreach.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm here to provide a brief summary of the public outreach promoting the RMAP survey. So as of late yesterday, we have about 4,200 survey responses. The survey opened 6 weeks ago and closes at midnight tomorrow. There was both a paid and non-paid multimedia campaign, which included English and Spanish radio, print, TV, and digital ads, as well as a digital kiosk. A news release was sent to local media, and the survey was promoted in 7 articles. Some of you may have seen Jeanette on the news as well. We also use community organizations, local businesses, and government offices to help promote the survey. A variety of organizations were targeted, such as the Chambers of Commerce, local nonprofit groups, neighborhood groups and associations, and many more. We also promoted the survey at in-person events targeting low-income, minority, senior, and limited English proficiency populations to make sure that all voices are heard in the survey. PAG staff attended events scheduled by local organizations such as food banks and events at neighborhood centers. In total, we've attended 9 events, and we have another one scheduled this afternoon. We've also engaged nearly 200 people so far. Paper copies of the survey were also available both in English and Spanish. So as I mentioned, PAG staff attended events at 9 locations, which were identified using the EPA's EJ screening tool, PAG Title VI maps, and the US DOT ETC Explorer. Within the EPA's EJ screening tool, we looked at limited English proficiency populations, persons with disabilities, low income, and populations over 64. And within the US DOT ETC Explorer, we considered transportation cost burden, household income, and access burden, which looks at households with no personal vehicle or transit availability. And the dates and times of the community-based organization's scheduled services were also a factor, so that we had a variety of times and dates selected. And this map on the right is just an example showing the EPA's EJ screening tool for limited English proficiency populations, and the blue dots are 6 of the 9 locations that we selected. The 2 locations in Green Valley and the one in Marana are not included on this map. Many people were also willing to share their feedback on the spot, which PAG staff documented and we will combine with the survey feedback. I think it's no surprise that we received a lot of comments about road condition and potholes. Several additional comments were also received, ranging from comments about transit, bicycle lanes, and overall infrastructure. The staff at the various community centers and libraries also had great feedback. They hear many of the complaints or issues that people are having, and so it was really helpful that the staff shared this feedback with us at the events. And so we appreciate the various locations who allowed us to set up a table, and then the staff again for their support and assistance. Transitioning away from the in-person events, we also heavily promoted the survey electronically. We reached out to many organizations and included a link on social media accounts and included information in their newsletters, and many did an e-blast as well. So this helped us reach many people in the community very quickly. And these are just a few of the organizations that we reached out to who helped us promote the survey across all jurisdictions. This is an overview of the RMAP engagement. Again, the target date for finalizing and approving the plan is spring 2025. So we're on track mid-year here with phase 1, which is the survey closing again tomorrow at midnight. And the survey is only one component of public participation. So next we will be working on phases 2 and 3 for additional outreach, which will include focus groups, neighborhood events, and tabling at major events in Tucson in the fall. And these are currently being planned out further, and we can provide an update at a later time. That's all I have. If you have any questions, or do you want to do questions at the end?
Any questions? Natalie has a question.
I very much appreciate how much effort was put into reaching out. I've received it many times, so it's definitely working. I guess I'm just curious, since we mostly have a completed list of projects for RMAP, what's the logic in doing the outreach right now? How will the information you collect be incorporated into the project
Sure. So I can kick off and I'll let Jeanette or Hannah supplement, but we're looking at high-level priorities to help direct funding. So that's the basis
That's
for
what we
most of the
brought to the
questions.
working group, and we're gonna analyze it and make decisions based on the public input.
Yeah, that one will be part of, sorry, Mr. Chair. Ms. Shep, yeah, so, we are gonna be using that information to, just to validate, one, where we are with the project list, and is that really meeting the needs of the community and what we're hearing from the community? And also talking about some of that categorical money, making sure that there's funds available to achieve some of those outcomes that we're hearing from the community. In looking at the preliminary results, it seems like we're, you know, pretty much tracking with what we're hearing. But we'll get more solidified results from MetroQuest, our survey provider, within the upcoming weeks here. We do have our MAP working group meeting next week, so we anticipate having another one before our August TPC to continue to look at some of these items. But it's really going to be looking at what we're hearing from the community, what the survey results show, and then just looking at where we are with the project list and making adjustments if necessary to make sure that we're accommodating what we're hearing from the community. But I did also wanted to say thank you to everybody here at TPC, because I know a lot of you did receive the email and forwarded it on. And then early on in the survey process, even contacted us to, you know, make suggestions on how to make it better. There were a few things that, you know, little boxes that weren't showing completely and things like that. So we really do value all the help and assistance that you guys provided, as well as, you know, leadership from your jurisdictions who also put, I know most of the ward offices put advertisements in their weekly newsletters, and that was all very, very helpful. So
Could I just request, I mean, what the data you're collecting is super valuable, so could the results be formally presented to this committee so that we
Yes.
can?
Yeah, they will be, Mr. Chair, Ms. Shep, yes, the results will be obviously part of the final RMAP document, so that'll be used from here on out. But yes, they will be shared with the working group and then with this committee, and then of course with management and regional council as the plan progresses through. And we anticipate, because we had such a good turnout and hopefully even more turnout in the next couple of days, that those survey results will probably be used for other planning efforts, you know, in the next few years. So got a lot of good information there.
Thank you.
Other questions? I do have a question. I think, can we go back to that map that showed the, I think it was not exactly what it showed. It wasn't clear to me. That one right there. So I see you were targeting all of those folks, which is good. Have you analyzed the data to make sure that we're reaching communities with people of color, those who've experienced historic disinvestment?
Yes, so the survey does collect demographic questions. So as long as people elected to fill that out, we've been tracking, you know, income, age, and we'll be able to present that as part of the final results.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
Well, Mr. Chair, to add to what Melody is saying, it's hard because not everybody who took the survey self-identified.
Got it.
So there's, you know, I want to say, looking at last week's results, there's probably a solid third of survey respondents who didn't answer those questions. So, but we have noticed that we had pretty good distribution in most categories. And based on that, we've, you know, been trying to target our outreach either in the in-person events or with direct communication with, you know, our partners in South Tucson, particularly, also with the tribes. So we're trying to at least reach those folks and then provide opportunities for us to either go to them and help them participate. I know we had some individuals who were visually impaired, and we worked directly with them to make sure that they could participate, because obviously doing the online survey is a challenge there. So yeah, we have been tracking that, and we'll have the actual breakdowns. But yeah, we didn't want to require people to self-identify, and then if they didn't, not include their feedback, because it's important.
And so based on what you've seen so far, you feel like you're getting a good cross-section of the community and those folks whose voices typically aren't heard, you feel like they're being represented in the survey?
At this juncture, you know, looking at the results that we had last week and the week before, it did seem like we were getting a good result. So we'll see when we get the complete report from MetroQuest.
Thank you. Catherine?
Can you remind me, because I took the survey in English, was it available in English and Spanish at least?
It was
Okay.
available in English and Spanish. We also did advertising in English and Spanish and targeted some Spanish publications. Oh, and I believe
Other languages, was there a way to reach out to
Yeah.
PAG to get it in the?
yes, so yeah, we could provide translation for other languages as well. And that's the case with all of our meetings, so if ever somebody would like a translator for any number of languages, track them down. Similar, I'm sure, to how you guys do business.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Right. I believe Dave Zinda is up next.
All right, Dave, take it away.
All right, yes, good morning. It's good to be with you again. Yes, I'm David, the Economic and Financial Planning Manager here at PAG. And so today I want to highlight for you some numbers that we've been developing as a part of this 2055 RMAP financial plan in particular. And as we preview some of these numbers, do please note that we're still more or less in draft form, and so some things might change ever so slightly. If we could go to the next slide, please, quicker. So this process has been a long one so far. Forecasts were initially developed beginning in March 2021. Pretty soon after I came on board at PAG, we got to work on it. Thank you. From there, preliminary methodologies to generate revenue forecast in coordination with that development were presented to TPC throughout 2022 and 2023. And to kind of sum up that conversation, we did use a slightly different methodology from times past. We used to do a lot of that estimation here by PAG, but now we are using official forecast where available based on our consultation with those entities who collect those revenues. For example, we use official RTA forecast produced by the Eller Business and Research Center, official HERF forecast created collaboratively by ADOT's Financial Management Services and their economic consultants. I also have been generally trying to follow what I perceive to be ADOT's assumptions, and also sometimes they're explicitly stated assumptions that have reached out to them, which is in their own long range plan. Among those is that federal funding is constant over a long horizon year to year, which I more or less follow some nuances we'll see. So the combination of this work came with this committee, TPC, approving the underlying framework described above in January 2023. However, there have been some minor updates since that time that should be noted, but no large changes in methodology were conducted despite these slight updates. For one, we have now incorporated official HERF forecasts from ADOT that have been updated as of November 2023. I think they were issued about that time. Additionally, these revenue forecasts now reflect the new RTA forecast from Eller Business Research Center issued in March 2024. I've also updated some federal funding figures to reflect current apportionments as available. And furthermore, as I understand by the request of City of Tucson, I've included $140 million for bus rapid transit grant money. 70 million of that 140 figure is assumed to come from competitive grant funding, and the other half from the City of Tucson, from what I understand from conversations with them. There will also need to be some minor modifications going forward, and as we speak, I'm incorporating revisions from each of you or member jurisdictions regarding the amount of local funding that you have identified as being used for projects of a regional nature that should be incorporated into the RMAP, or what I like to call our mappable projects. I'm still waiting for some of you. If you happen to get your updates maybe by Thursday or Friday, there's a pretty good chance I can fold those into the RMAP working group on Monday, and I will certainly shoot for that. Okay. So in general, most of these revenue forecasts are presented in year of expenditure or nominal dollars, so that has inflation baked into it. And for example, the official ADOT HERF forecast are presented in nominal dollars. I don't have a constant dollar forecast for those. But in the RMAP, we are going to use 2024 constant dollars. And so that's why we discount back in time a revenue figure, say in the year 2055, to present day values using a rate of inflation to make that 2055 figure into a 2024 dollar figure. That way we can match the present value of revenues with the present value of project cost in a relatively easy way. So as long as the rate of inflation assumed here to be 2.5% on average throughout the life of the RMAP across those 30 years, roughly matches the rate of growth of project cost on average for the year 2055, we should have a fiscally constrained project list when we budget using those project values. But if you think that project costs are going to dramatically increase on average across this 30-year horizon, something above 2.5%, we can certainly increase that rate, the inflation rate of 2.5%, which will decrease the amount of money you have available today in 2024 dollars to budget to projects. But for now, I have stuck to about 2.5% based on, at least from the currency money side of things, what has been a traditional good long run estimate of inflation. Okay, so here we see some of our summary of assumptions that were used to generate these various funding forecasts. So let's start out with the federal side of things. During the FAST Act, which was enacted in 2016, as well as the IIJA, which was enacted in 2022, federal funds grew at a rate of about, well, precisely 2% per year. Consequently, I'm maintaining that assumption, and I apply a 2% growth rate to all of our federal funding sources for the life of the RMAP on a nominal basis. The exception is with this RAC funding, or Regional Allocation Committee, something like that, that is ADOT funds that's used in these regions, which is an important function of the National Highway Performance Program and the National Highway Program. Those are assuming a 0 growth rate on a nominal basis, and that is because that's exactly what ADOT does in their long range plan, assuming a constant throughout that horizon. For competitive grants, I assumed roughly 2.5 times the amount of actual grants received since 2010, adjusted for inflation, with an additional 70 million oriented towards the high capacity transit project as requested by the city of Tucson. Going on to the state sources, I've used the official ADOT forecast, which are available for the first 10 years of this particular planning horizon. After that, I extrapolated the revenues based on an assumption of a decreasing growth rate implied by those official forecasts on a nominal basis. So for ADOT, going from like 2030 to 2031, it may have been a 4% growth rate, then goes to maybe like 3.8 and so on down. So I kind of continued that trend using just linear modeling. Here's an Department of Environmental Quality. Funding has never really changed. If memory serves correctly, it's $267,000 that we've been receiving since time immemorial. But, you know, I'm going to give some growth there, 0.5 percentage point on a real basis, just to allow for similar project funding that might come along the way in some unexpected form. Okay, so turning to local forecast, RTA forecast, as you know, are official from Eller Business Research Center. And we in this plan are employing the pessimistic scenario. Maintenance of effort funding is by statute determined by the GDP deflator, which is a measure of inflation. And so I'm assuming that maintenance of effort funding is increasing at the same rate of inflation we use through the project, which is 2.5%. Local budgets, of course, provided by you all. Specifically, we asked you for the next 10 years of funding that you'd be willing to provide. So I took those year by year for those 10 years that you provided them, added them up across jurisdictions, so that'd be a figure for a year. After that initial 10-year framework, I averaged all those values together for the previous 10 years and just increased them by a 1% real growth rate each year, kind of as an estimate. 30-year horizon, there's going to be some uncertainty. Okay, so there's an additional local funding source called Tucson High Capacity Transit for the bus rapid transit funding. I assume that to be 70 million across 10 years or 7 million per year for the purpose of this project. Because our chair, Mr. Credo, is walking in, I'm going to repeat that part again, make sure you're okay with it. There's an additional local funding source called Tucson High Capacity Transit for bus rapid transit funding, assumed to be 70 million across 10 years or 7 million per year for the purposes of this project, which I budgeted for those initial 10 years, right? I mean, for 70 million. So from there, I assume 20% of 7 million, or about 1.4 million funding ongoing maintenance and operation for this project, just to include in this fund.
Say that again.
So 10 years, you have $70 million equally spread out across those 10 years, which I think is the cost to get that project up and going. After that, I assume kind of general maintenance and operation on that of about, what I say, 20% of that 7 million. So after those 10 years, 1.4 million is assumed in funding. There's also a Tucson mass transit funding category. In conversations with the city and Mr. Hartley, it was found that the general fund provided around 69 million in funding for transit this year, which I was instructed to assume to be the case going forward into the future. And so this category should also help compensate for what was previously categorized as fare box revenues, which do not appear to exist at this point in time, which was different when we first began this whole project.
David, can I go back to the high capacity transit project question? So that project is currently included in the draft RTA Next plan with the local match coming out of the RTA Next plan. So is it double counted right now? And I realize $70 million in a multi-billion-dollar plan is just a rounding error, but I just wanted to point that out because you said on multiple occasions that the local match is coming from Tucson, which may be the case if RTA Next is not successful, but right now it's included as an RTA Next project.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, for that comment. So if that is true, I have these RTA funds. So if that 70 million is supposed to come out of the RTA fund, from that standpoint, it would be double counting, and we can correct that as we get more information or get more instruction.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Very helpful to know. Okay, did that cover them all? Let's see. We talked about Tucson mass transit funding category. So that's 69 per million per year going into the future, compensating for fare box revenues in addition to other things. Okay, I think we covered that. Okay, so here's the funding breakdown for federal funding in particular, and I know that there's a lot on here. Blue table shows year of expenditure forecast. So that is with inflation. Generally, these official forecasts are presented on a nominal basis. So I kind of start there from the forecasting and I bring back those dollars to 2024 figures, which are shown in the green table in 2024 constant terms. You'll also notice that I truncated this table to make it more presentable, such that you see initial forecasts from 2024 to 2034, and then we skip to 2054 to just make for a bit of a less cluttered slide. In some cases, you'll notice that there are declining revenues on a constant dollar basis. And this is because the rate of inflation would exceed the rate of growth for these funding sources. And historically, this has been true in recent times as the rate of inflation has increased faster than the apportionments of federal funding, which you have seen in the last couple of years. So I show this generally for reference only. If you have any other kind of questions coming at the end of this presentation, as well as when these slides become available after the meeting, you can investigate them a little bit further, but I won't walk through them line by line at this point in time. I will point out that you can see boxes, as it were, in the blue table, such as for maybe some of these transit fundings, 5307, 5339, and so on. So that would be the most recent of what I had of TIP programmed amounts. And following the methodology, right, I average those together for the year immediately under the box. And that kind of becomes the standpoint, the starting number to then increase those at a growth rate of 2% per year. STBG is going to be the sum of all those population bands as appeared on the federal ledger in 2024. And then we increase that by 2% per year. RAC, National Highway Performance Program, comes from ADOT's 5-year plan. Those are the numbers that they programmed. That 169, I think they instructed me to, which was the average of all those 5 or 6 numbers, and then was constant by their instruction for the rest of the horizon, and so on and so forth. Okay, so for state and local, once again, we see a table here. Again, I provide this for reference, so I'm not going to spend too much time here, unless we have a question that can maybe perhaps help be answered by this table, but it's really going to follow that same kind of description that we saw in that summary table where we, so HERF, once again, that was just copied and pasted in the blue table from ADOT, pretty much. Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, we started at 267, increased at a rate of 0.5% per year, and that's how you get those numbers. RTA copied and pasted from Eller Business Research Center. Maintenance of effort, as far as I can tell, across the entire region for MOE funding, it was 51 million. So you increase that at the rate of inflation, 2.5%, you get each of those numbers. Compounding, of course. Local budgets, you see the sum of all the local budgets that you provided for me there. Those are going to change as I get newer estimates by you all. So you're going to see some here. Tucson Mass Transit, 69 million was provided from the general fund by the city. That's increasing at I can't remember off the top of my head, but you can see in the green table, it's assumed to be on the same every year on a constant dollar basis as if there were no inflation ever again. High capacity transit, once again, $70 million. Straight lined, I guess you could say, right, over 10 years, equal to 7 million every single year on a constant dollar basis. And so. Okay, so in total, I would imagine that you have roughly around 17 billion to work with in 2024 dollars. So the combined total all project cost should not exceed that threshold so as to be fiscally constrained. Of that 17 billion, as you can see, the largest bucket is local funding, and this is especially helped, of course, by the RTA tax generated revenues in addition to the funding that you have identified for your local contributions. And with that, kind of it's the end of the presentation, so I'm happy to take any questions as you have them.
Any questions for David? Catherine?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. For the maintenance of effort, what all does that include? Where's that funding going towards? When we have our MOE for transit, like $51 million a year is a big number. So I didn't know what all that includes.
Mr. Chair and Ms. Skinner, thank you for your question. So MOE, as I understand, came from the original RTA plan saying that we essentially couldn't take revenues generated from RTA and use them to fund things that we're already funding from our general fund. And so Pima County, I think Marana, I think Oro Valley, certainly City of Tucson, there may be one other there, had to provide some of this MOE funding. I've gotten those figures from our MOE calculations that we do here at Pima Association of Governments. Not all of that money is showing up in the tip, and you have to forgive me, I'm not entirely certain why, but I can tell you that that $51 million is what I saw reflected coming from all those various sources in MOE funding. We typically assumed, as I understand in previous versions of the RMAP, assuming that all that funding is not necessarily new money, but rather just used to help with ongoing maintenance and operation of transit system.
I guess my concern partially, I mean, it seems like a very large number, and then we might be duplicating what's shown in the MOE, the local budgets, and then the transit columns.
For sure. Yes, that would be a very good point to know. So certainly if anyone is putting up some local funding and you're, please separate out MOE so we don't double count that. I appreciate that point, and that's something that I can look into further as well and maybe get clarification on, you know, whether maybe a tip amount is a better one to choose or continue with the spreadsheets that I have from our finance department.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well too. Maintenance of effort, something that you're already using, you can't count it towards new revenue. So continue to use it. For example, if you get maintenance for roads or transit, for instance, you actually plant that money with other funds.
See, from a transit perspective, we have about 8 million in our MOE, so it's and I'm pretty sure we're larger than Rural Valleys or Marana's. Sorry, so I would think it'd be the city making up the rest of it, but there's also the transit column, so I don't know. Those all kind of sound the same to me.
Thank you. I can look into that further.
David, you mentioned the RAC. How often do they look at that? The RAC formula, that revenue allocation advisory committee? That's how much money goes to PAG, how much goes to MAG. How often is that reviewed and updated?
Yes, thank you for your question. I think that has stayed, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Brown, 13% of the funding has normally been allocated to the PAG region. And I
never changed a lot, or?
I don't think that's changed since at least the turn of the millennium. Is that true?
That's the Casa Grande Accord, correct?
I believe so, yes. Okay. It's like
I'm just like we're looking at 30 years, like what things can't change in 30 years.
Mr. Chair, yes, that's my understanding as well. It's an annual process. It's a moving average, but it is stayed at 13% since around year 2000, 1999, as part of the Casa Grande Accords. Mr. James, do you have anything to add?
No, that's yeah, as you mentioned, on an annual basis. As far as any chance of that percentage changing in the future, probably not. It was if you look at the history of the Casa Grande Accords, it was a huge lift to even get everyone to agree to that. So I don't think a lot of the jurisdictions want to touch up a 10-foot pole to try to change any of that, and I don't blame them because they can get very political pretty fast. So it won't change anytime soon, but yeah, it's something that's looked at on an annual basis and so.
Thank you.
If I may, is the academic resource allocation advisory committee? Is that, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think revenue allocation advisory, something like that.
It's resource?
Yeah, resource.
Great.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Bobby. Appreciate it.
Hey, Mr. Chair, Hunsu No, Dr. No is online and he's going to give us a few updates on the modeling. Data science team.
Go ahead, Nansu.
Yeah. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of TPC. Thank you so much for this opportunity to update the 2055 RMAP modeling. At the last in the PopTech meeting held on June 26th, so we discussed the regional land use model and activity-based model input with the jurisdiction members, and which are for the test of a base year and the forecast year, AVM, and just land use model. The discussion includes, and for land use model side and housing unit update, a known project developed together with the jurisdictions for 6 different job sectors and 1 residential sector. Forecast year control total balancing and the jobs for the cases like jobs more than just a draft control we discussed, and redevelopment test result, and for activity-based model side, and we discussed and the socioeconomic data sources, and for ABM, and some base year socioeconomic patterns, and including household density, income, and household size, and household number of workers, and the age distribution, employment patterns, and some just missing items. So we're gonna update this summer. And currently, in the PAC data science team has been testing the base year activity-based model. We developed the input and reviewing the outputs of the current base year model we completed. And for land use model, we are testing employment assignment logic, and for the next forecast year 2030. For the next step, and we'd like to continue this test with further forecast years, and hope to complete the test this summer. Then just we'll continue other activity-based model sub-model tests, performance measure updates, and improvement, and the RMAP scenario development, hopefully this fall, or maybe a little delayed, but we are targeting like this fall. Yeah, I think that's all I have for just the 2055 RMAP modeling. If you have any question, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. Is there any questions? All right, no questions. Are there any other updates for this item?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Crystal, you can pull my slide. I just have one slide just to kind of talk over the schedule and where we're at right now. As you can see, we've had regular updates with this committee and with our management regional council, but also with our working group. So continue to have those discussions through the development of the plan. We have our public engagement survey wrapping up as Melanie walked you through. We have some more outreach that's going to continue through the end of the year as we complete the process and finalizing some of those discussions and working with the working group all the way through the end of the summer. Hope to have the performance measures draft project list, and of course decide on that fiscally constrained number here pretty soon by the end of the summer. So you can see as we work through the bottom of the spreadsheet, this is really where we get into finishing the actual document, the mapping work, wrapping up the modeling, finishing up our public comment periods, and working through just the required steps of getting it through all the committees for a adoption date, hopefully at the May Regional Council of 2025 May. So this committee will continue to see regular project updates at our monthly meetings, but we do anticipate having maybe some more frequent working group meetings in the next couple months. Usually we meet monthly, but just as we're wrapping up these important pieces, making sure that we pull that group together as needed. So this is where we're at, and if you have any questions, Hannah and I can hopefully answer them.
Thank you, John. Any questions on the schedule, the timeline? Natalie?
I had a question about, that's not really about the schedule. I could have asked it earlier. With the performance measures, is it anticipated that the greenhouse gas emissions there will be the performance measures that will be included in the performance measures? Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any questions online? All right, hearing none, we'll wrap up this item. Thank you, Jeanette, and everybody who presented. We'll move on to item 9, future agenda items. Does anybody have a future agenda item? You heard the one from Catherine about a future discussion on the 12-6 expenditure plan. Any others?
Just the results from the RMAP survey. I think we're all interested in that.
Anything else? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to item 10, adjournment. Meeting stands adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.